Hello and welcome everyone to the next Foreman Deep Dive, and your host Ken Gilvin here as always, and I'll be hosting today Shim, who's going to be talking to us about the work that's been going on Host Facets. It's pretty interesting stuff. It's pretty interesting, I think, if you work on anything to do with host plugins particularly. So buckle up. This is going to be fun. If you've got any questions, you can ask them live. We have the IRC channel, as always. There's also the live chat via the YouTube page, if you're looking there. Or you can hit me up on Twitter, and I will try and monitor that as well. So, without further ado, then, I'll hand you over to Shim. All yours.
Hey, hello. So, I want to introduce you a new concept of facets. Basically, I was not very happy about the state of our host managed, which is our host model. And I've invented kind of a new way, new approach to this model. How can we actually create it and maintain it for a longer time? Because right now, as you can see, our host managed is a bit clogged object. It has properties that has to do with Puppet, like Puppet class or stuff like that. The same file has methods that are relevant to Puppet, like clear Puppet info, for example. But in the same time, it has things to do with provisioning or compute resources. Here we can see build hooks, which are not part of either of them. And architectures, operating systems, again, provisioning. So basically, we have a huge object that does many way too many things that I wanted. So you can see the concept of facets. Basically, facets, it's a model that it has one-to-one relationship with our host managed object that will have that will hold the responsibility for which it was created. So, for example, Puppet facet will hold all the responsibilities and all the properties that are relevant to Puppet for a single host. Provisioning facet will do with the provisioning aspect of the same host. So it will hold properties like architecture or operating system that is relevant for this provisioning. The same goes for content facet, and you can think about any other facets that we have. So what we have a skinny host. It will contain only abstract connections. It will actually, in the future, I want to see only a registry and that is dealt by the host managed. That means it will have things like host group, the status of the host, the aggregated status of the host. It will hold its name, and basically that's it. Everything else will go to facets. Like here, all Puppet facet things will go to Puppet facet, like Puppet proxies, CA proxy, and stuff like that. Again, the provisioning and the content will hold their own properties. This is only a suggestion. This is a screenshot of some work in progress that I did. You can see that each facet can get a tab or its own place in the host forms. So here you can see that you have a Puppet facet tab that could be enabled or disabled for a single host, which enables us mix and match for facets. And it has its own properties that are extracted from other tabs. So you know, if you want to deal with Puppet on a single host, you will know that you have to go to Puppet tab and deal with all your Puppet properties in the same place. So what does it give us? Every aspect of the host is encapsulated. It's in the same place. You can see that all Puppet work is in Puppet Facet. Everything that is connected to content management of a single host is held by the content facet, etc. It's connected to a host, so you can search for hosts that in Puppet have some property. For example, you can search for hosts that have a Puppet environment set to production. That's okay. Every property within the facet is connected, so you can actually validate the existence of some properties that are related to you. And the validations are atomic, so you know that you can cancel the save of Puppet Facet if your Puppet properties are not set. For example, right now, you can set Puppet proxy to new. That means you are not dealing with you don't have a proxy that will serve your Puppet requests for this host, but you can save the Puppet environment, which means your state is kind of undefined because you still have an environment, but you can't actually serve it. And all the concept is a per host basis. So you can have one host in your single Foreman instance. You can have one host that is managed by Puppet. You can have different hosts that is managed by Chef, for example, if you have such a situation. And you can have hosts that do not manage their configuration at all, which means Puppet Facet will be absent for that particular host. That's the concept of the main concept of facets. So basically, it's a model, it's connected to host, and it holds all properties that are related to some aspect of host management. Let's talk a bit about the future. In the future, I would like to see the facets concept expanded to different abstract objects, to other abstract objects in Foreman. In green, you can see the core objects, host group, interface, host. You can see the facets on each one of those abstract objects. You can see interface facets. You can see host group facets. And of course, host facets that are already there. Each plugin can actually contribute more than one facet. That means, for example, Puppet plugin can contribute both host facet that will hold all the properties that are relevant for a host, and the host group facet, which will hold all the relevant properties for a host group. Provisioning plugin, for example, will the provisioning plugin is a imaginary plugin that actually creates a host in case of virtual machines. So here we can see that provisioning plugin can have facets in host group, in interface, that will be the set of properties that are relevant to creating a single interface in for the provisioning. And of course, facet for host that will hold things like architecture and operating system. And of course, things like content plugin that has only to deal with hosts can have only one facet, of course. So that was a.
Before you jump into the code, I had a question for you, actually. Stop
sure.
me if you're still doing sort of the layout. I don't want to interrupt at the wrong time.
No.
So
you're
just
in a good point.
out of interest. So you obviously want to see the host object itself become very minimal over time.
Right.
Do you see host managed going away entirely at some point, and we base all of this off the host base object?
Yeah, to some point, I would like to see them converged. So you won't have to have inheritance in hosts.
Yeah, sure.
At least for this matter, for this thing.
Cool. Okay. So,
because I'm not sure that inheritance is a good place for multiple facets. Basically, you don't have multiple inheritance.
SDI has caused us various pain over the years, right? So, fair enough. Yeah. Okay. I was just curious as to where you saw the evolution of the actual core models as well as the facets. That was interesting. Okay, so that's me. Carry on.
Yeah. So I will jump into the code in a second. I have a bit of. I've created a plugin that is called Foreman Build History. It's in my GitHub, so you can actually get it from there. What it does, let me share my screen. It will be better to do that, I think. Probably I need to increase the font. Is it okay?
Yeah, that should be fine, I think.
Great. Okay, so it's a plugin that all it does is writing a history of things that happen to a host. It's from one side, it's an example plugin for using facets, but it's kind of functional, and it actually writes events. So what do we have? I think I will start with the model. So we have a build history facet. It's not too big. It has a connection to a host. It belongs to a host. It has many templates, which I will show you right now. And here they are. It's a very simplistic model. So, what other things that we want to see? The entry point, as I thought of, was to connect to our unattended controller and see, and when some action, some template actually is rendered, to record when that happened. That's all that my facet does. So when host template, which is the template rendering method, is called, I'm going to update template timestamp, which is basically creating a facet or getting the facet that is already there, and I am adding another related object, which is a history template that writes the request time and puts it and for the type of the template. Then I'm just saving the facet. That's all. So you have seen how and here you can see the index, which when I just show all the facets that are there. That's all you have to actually do for creating a facet. It's pretty small. It has a very distinct. It's just a model basically, so you don't have any. You still have to deal with everything that is related to views and controllers by itself, because it can be a standalone model. You can actually create your own controllers, like in the case of build history controller here, that can show you stuff that is related only to your facet. And basically that's it. So if you have questions, I will be more than glad to hear them.
Yes, I think I do anyway. So firstly, when you were showing the presentation, you showed how the facet was enableable, right? It had a checkbox on the host form. Is that true for this facet, or is this something that will be enabled on all hosts automatically? Where is the kind of what to attach it to handled?
It's a good question. Right now, what we have right now in Foreman is only the framework that enables you to actually attach facets to hosts. Mm-hmm. You still don't have any framework in the UI for enabling or disabling it. So you basically have to do it on your own.
Right.
But it's possible to add it. I have a private branch that I did it for the presentation, for example.
Sure. So in this case, with this build history one, this would just be enabled on all hosts, right?
Yeah. Right. But that's kind of dependent on the logic of the facet.
Of course. So yeah, you could turn it off, or you could control it somewhere, have its own page, whatever. Yeah, cool. Okay, that's very cool. I had another question. I'm just gonna try and remember what it was while I have a look around, see if anybody else has anything to ask.
Sure.
We don't have so many people watching live today. It's not like a demo, but there are a few. Hi guys, how you doing? So just thinking back through the code that you showed, could you throw up the last one that actually saves the facet again?
Yeah, right. Second. The one that saved the facet.
Yeah.
So
the controller. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so the first line of the update template method shows. Obviously, I can see what that's doing, but the second part after the or, the build history facet, is that a kind of an also-defined method?
Sorry for the bad naming. Build history is the name of the facet.
Yeah, I get that. What I'm asking is the second bit, which obviously I can see what it's doing. It's building a facet. I get that, and your facet happens to start with the word build. But did you have to define that method, the build history?
No. That's something that is provided by Rails actually.
Right.
If you have a one-to-one relation, you will have a build method that will create a dependent dependent object for you.
All
So
right.
you
Yeah,
can
I knew you could call
build architecture or something.
yeah, I knew you could call dot build on an object and pass in the appropriate parameters. But I didn't realize you could prefix it as well like that. That's interesting.
It's for one-to-one relationships, you will have prefixed methods, right? Like you have here, and for one-to-many, you have an array. Basically, you have a collection of objects. So you are getting to a, let's say, host.classes.build will add an object to a collection.
Gotcha. Cool. That's very interesting. So today we have the core implementation, no UI, as you said. Are there any facets already implemented, or is it just the handling of facets that's implemented?
There are actually facets that are implemented. We have in Catella, we have a content facet that is actually working, and subscription facet.
Cool.
And I am, at some point in time, I will create Puppet facet. Right now, I have a lot of pending PRs that are kind of first step for that. I'm trying to separate the functionality, Puppet functionality, and to get it out of the host into different files first, and then I will be able to actually change the model.
It's a tough job. Puppet's obviously been baked into Foreman since day one, pretty much. So it is difficult, but it's a good idea. And obviously it brings the other config management engines kind of up to feature parity this way, which is nice. So, okay, so we have some facets. You're obviously working on some more. Where do you see the limitations here? I mean, obviously it has to be dealing with a host, right? Or, as you showed in the future, maybe a host group or something. But right now we have to be talking about a host. But what other limitations on what you can do? So I'm thinking, for example, I have a plugin, right, which calls alias method chain in the middle of the fact import. So that's a hack, right? That's not nice. And I would like, so I'm talking about default host group for those who don't know what I'm talking about. And default host group obviously jumps in as you import facts to see if this host already has a host group and then do something with that information. Maybe it's going to change the host group, maybe it's not. I would love to do that in a nicer way. I've had it break on me numerous times. And I'm always looking out for ways to think, is there a cleaner way of doing this than hacking on the import facts method? And this is potential, right? But am I going to get myself into pain trying to do something like this?
Right. So facet is not exactly connected to the thing that you actually want to do, but as part of the work on facets, I'm thinking a lot of about having Foreman as a framework, so it would be extended easy in a more easier way. So actually, if you have some pain points that you are actually alias method chaining in some places, talk to me, and I will try to actually add some kind of better framework for extending the functionality. That means you have some kind of functionality that you want to be put as an extension to Foreman core objects.
Honestly, I think default host group is one of those things that should have always been merged into core and just nobody got around to it, but there you go. That's personal opinion, right? So it's one of those things that what it does is extremely important to some people and completely useless to others, which is why it's a plugin, right? So but the way in which it has to be done, the timing of it is incredibly critical, because you don't want to return, you want to get your host group on the first Puppet run, which means it has to be done during the ENC process, and that's a bit awkward. You can't do it like as an after filter because you've already returned the data at that point. So it's kind of hacky. It could possibly be done as a before filter on the fact import or something like that, but I don't know. I just saw you using an after filter on a controller method, and it started my brain thinking. So okay, cool. So this is a discussion for another time. It's not really facet related, I guess. So
yeah,
I guess
facet is more about storing properties that are relevant to to some aspect of managing a host.
Gotcha.
So, for example, Puppet.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense actually, and presumably you'd want to do facets for perhaps improving compute resource stuff, right? So I can think, for example, that right now we're not particularly great at storing compute attributes, right? If you specify the RAM and the CPUs and so on for a host,
Right.
and for some compute resources we do that quite well. For other compute resources, not so much. So that's potentially something.
Right. I was thinking about the whole compute resources, and I was calling it a provisioning process. But yes, it has. It's actually a very, very interesting topic because it has actually two dimensions. You have, from one side, you have multiple compute resources as one dimension, but from the other side, you have multiple ways to actually deploy a machine, provisioning or I don't know,
Pixie,
Pixie or whatever.
Actually, that's kind of interesting because I hadn't thought of it that way. I was thinking from the view of we already have a set of plugins for compute resources, right? We have Foreman Zen, Foreman DigitalOcean, so on and so forth. And it seems like we're moving towards having all the compute resources as plugins, and that has some value because because fog is also breaking out into multiple dependencies. It means plugins can move faster so long as the version of fog core that is shipped with Foreman core is compatible, right? So the plugins for the compute resource can move as fast as they need to move, which is quite useful. And we've obviously had problems where we've been stalled waiting on fog releases or a new Foreman release to fix a compute resource. So if there's already plugins for the compute resource, it seems to me to make sense to add facets to those plugins, right? To help store extra information on a host that is related to that specific compute resource.
You will not have to actually rely on a single generic form. You will be able to create a form for each type of compute resource.
Yeah,
it would be a different table, different.
And that would be super helpful because for example, one I would say regression that we've had is since 1.8 when we brought in the new networking, which has been superb, really useful, but it did kind of make a mess for any more, shall I say, cloud-like compute resource, so something like EC2 or OpenStack or DigitalOcean, where you don't really specify network interfaces, right? You just kind of go, give me a VM and tell me what IP it's on. And our form doesn't work great for that. You still have to now specify a domain, a subnet, all this kind of thing, which makes no sense at all. So being able to kind of abstract away the interfaces and take that off the form as well and just go, I'm going to have a different form and I'm going to figure out how to save that in a way that form is happy with afterwards. It'd be nice. It would be very nice.
Yeah, it's possible, but it's in the long future because it has a lot of pain points in the middle.
Yeah, I'm thinking way ahead.
I feel
way ahead. But even something simple like, so for example, today we allow you to edit an over VM and resave it, and it will go and change the properties on over, right? So you can increase the RAM, and it will go and update that VM. But you can't do that for something like libvirt, right? Because we don't really store that data. Right. So it's potentially possible to fix that. And it always was potentially possible to fix that. But it feels like using facets to store sort of extended attributes and things like that, you can actually much more easily sort of do a comparison between what's on the hypervisor and what Foreman thinks the VM should have, and then at some point do something about it. So, yeah, quite interesting stuff. Okay, a last check for questions, but I don't think I see anything just now. Let's have a look. Nope, not at the moment. Just going to check the YouTube channel as well, since we have lots of different places people can chat with us. It's tricky to keep up with everything, but I don't see any questions just now. So I think we will wrap this up. Let's go back and show the closing notes, shall we? So thanks very much, Jim. It's been great to talk to you today. It's really interesting to see where this is going. I'm definitely going to go and have a play with it for some of my plugins. I think you've convinced me not to look at this for a default host group, maybe, but there are other plugins I think which are worth thinking about. So That's been really interesting. Thank you for coming on and talking about it. If you have enjoyed this video, the people watching live, or indeed anybody watching it as a recording later, do let us know. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, all the usual YouTube streamer nonsense. You can, of course, follow us on YouTube or on Twitter, or come join us on the mailing lists. But for today, that is everything. We have a community demo on Thursday if you'd care to join us for that. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and do take care.